resolution phase.
Thanking the noble Lord Brown of Ladyton, for both securing this debate and for opening it in such a comprehensive and powerful manner. I should declare that I'm co-chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Eritrea. I'll focus, if I may, on my remarks on justice and accountability, which are absent from the 2nd of November peace agreement and from the November the 12th roadmap. Yes, we all agree that the killings in the deadliest war in the world, Africa's Great War, must end immediately. But peace without justice is an illusion, a chimera with impunity invariably leading to more and more atrocities. And I remain sceptical that this omission will be addressed at a later stage. Even in the last few days, I've seen disturbing reports from Alamata about accelerated ethnic cleansing, in which I drew to the attention of the noble Lord the Minister just yesterday. Since the 3rd of November 2020, when the war began, I've hosted or participated in numerous discussions about Tigray. It took until March 2021 for Ethiopia and Eritrea to confirm Eritrea's involvement in the war, but from the very outset, its involvement was widely suspected. Eritrea is a country with enforced conscription, which abuses its own citizens and has a long record of exporting terror into Tigray and other areas of Ethiopia. In December 2020, and in repeated questions, I've asked the Minister about the forced return of refugees to Eritrea, the desperate need for a humanitarian corridor, and how and when we intend to bring to justice the militias responsible for these many barbaric acts. Back in 2020, the Minister said, his words, "The moment does not allow." Let me ask again, when will it allow? In March 2021, I raised reports of a massacre at the historic town of Axum, well known to the noble Baroness Lady Jones, whom we'll hear from soon, in which a church deacon stated that in Axum 800 civilians had been executed. Amnesty said atrocities could well amount to crimes against humanity, and the noble Lord the Minister told me the reports were credible. In June 2021, I hosted a meeting with Mohammed Abdel Salem Babakir, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Eritrea. He detailed appalling violations of human rights. On December the 16th, 2021, I told the House that thousands had been murdered, injured and subjected to inhuman and degrading treatment, and thousands subjected to sexual violence as a weapon of war. My lords, what did we do to stop that? 17 months ago, all the predictors of atrocity crimes had emerged as the world stood by and watched. The utter failure of the international community to intervene and to save lives makes a mockery of the duty to protect. As Tigray was plunged into gross human suffering, the world was too busy and looked away. As Tigray has seen repeated evidence, report after report, that Eritrean forces have been responsible for some of the worst atrocities, including massacres of civilians, conflict-related sexual violence and attacks, and forcible repatriation of Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia in camps like Hitsats. We have done precious little to help them. When did we last raise with Ethiopia its obligations under the Refugee Convention? As recently as the 6th of October, the European Parliament passed a resolution condemning the invasion of Tigray by Eritrean forces and specifically condemned the war crimes and human rights violations by Eritrean forces. It called on Ethiopia to sign and ratify the Rome Statute of the ICC and stressed the need for an independent and impartial mechanism to address ongoing violations and accountability. My lords, what have we done to support that European initiative? This weekend, I sent the FCDO Alex de Waal's assessment of the despotism of Isaias Afwerki, whose logic, he said, is genocidal, and the conclusion of Professor Kejtil Tronvol that atrocities in Tigray amount to genocide. What has the Foreign Secretary done about this? Others who have issued warning signs of atrocity crimes include Genocide Watch and the US Holocaust Memorial Museum. Why has this expert analysis been ignored? These statements on the serious risk of atrocity crimes and genocide trigger the duty to prevent, as confirmed by the International Court of Justice in its 2007 judgment. How have we responded to that duty? What assessment's been made to the report referred to by the Noble Lord Brown of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights following their joint investigation into alleged violations of international human rights, humanitarian and refugee law, and committed by all parties? And what about the findings of the UN Human Rights Council Commission, which said in September, I quote, that regarding the Eritrean Defence Forces, the Commission finds reasonable grounds to believe that it committed war crimes of violence to life and person, in particular murder, outrages on human dignity, in particular humiliating or degrading treatment, rape, sexual slavery and sexual violence. How is all this informing the government's response in line with the Genocide Convention? On the 23rd of September, in answer to a question I tabled to Lord Goldsmith, it was confirmed that a joint analysis of conflict and stability, a JACS assessment, in Ethiopia was completed earlier this year. He didn't answer the second limb of my question on whether the government had examined and assessed the risk of identity-based violence and mass atrocities. My Lords, will the analysis be made available to members of your Lordship's House via the library? And if not, why not? These aren't trivial matters. We're talking about mass killings, the use of starvation, rape and sexual violence being used as weapons of war. Yes, rape is being used as a weapon of war. Last week, Dr. Dennis Mukwege Foundation, in cooperation with the FCDO and the Washington University Institute for Public Health, published a joint report entitled Understanding Conflict-Related Sexual Violence, CRSV, in Ethiopia. Among the testimonies in this rare and rigorous analysis is a statement by a 27-year-old woman raped in front of her children by half a dozen Fano militiamen carrying out neighbourhood searches targeting Tigrayans. She testified, I quote, "2 of them raped me and I lost consciousness and don't know how many more raped me, if all 6 did or not. They said, you Tigrayans should disappear from the land west of Tekeze. You are evil and we are purifying your blood." The report said that data suggests that Ethiopian and allied forces committed CRSV on a widespread and systematic basis in order to eliminate or forcibly displace the ethnic Tigrayan population. The report also cites revenge rape and the lack of support for the deeply traumatized victims. Does the Noble Lord the Minister accept that the systematic elimination of a people because of their ethnicity is one of the criteria used to determine whether atrocities amount to genocide? And before the Noble Lord says that only a court can decide what is genocide, could he answer the actual question that I've just asked? That is, whether under the provisions of the 1948 Genocide Convention, does the elimination of an ethnic group constitute a genocide or not? Doesn't it also demonstrate why the government should provide time for the Genocide Determination Bill, given a second reading on the 28th of October, to make progress? And I particularly remind the Minister in the House of the speeches by my noble friend Lord Hannay and the noble Baroness Lady Sugg. And as for starvation being used as a weapon of war, a year ago I told the House that millions had been deliberately denied food and were starving, that this catastrophe is man-made, a word also repeated in a letter to me by Vicky Ford, the then African Minister, adding that, and I quote, a prerequisite to ending the depredations was Eritrea's immediate withdrawal from Tigray. And this isn't over. There are continuing reports of attacks on civilians by Eritrean soldiers in Tigray. There's a quotation which I can send to the Minister from the President of Mekelle University. There's Rita Kase, who's been referred to by the Noble Lord Brown, a young woman who addressed a meeting in your Lordship's House at which the Noble Lord Collins and I spoke, and she tells me there are unconfirmed reports from Adwa of Eritrean soldiers looting properties and stealing water pumps. Unsurprisingly then, Tigrayans in the UK who recently lobbied Parliament are deeply concerned by the lack of explicit mention in the peace agreement of the withdrawal of Eritrean militia. And what does the Minister make of Eritrea's training of the Amra militia? How does he respond to its continued collection of its war fund, the 2% diaspora tax, $4 million a year collected in Saudi Arabia alone, and detailed in a report I sent in 2 weeks ago, and used to pursue its agenda of destabilisation, to end. Eritrean forces have the potential to derail any peace deal. We should be very clear-headed about its pitiless, brutal and cruel ideology and its indifference to the suffering it causes. Until we address the elephant in the room and attend to justice and accountability, that will not change. Peace without justice will not endure, and I hope that the Minister agrees.
My Lords, I too congratulate the Noble Lord Brown for bringing this debate. It's a war that's been